Hello guys and welcome to a new video of Kotlin for Beginners playlist. Today we're going to discuss about classes and learn how to use them within our application. So we defined classes in the last video with a very short and simple definition that classes are just blueprints of something. But we didn't really go deep into that. So to understand this, let's have a basic example. So for instance, you are going to build a house. And for that house, you need to see the construction area, maybe the site of the building, and you're going to talk to some people about stuff related to your house. And eventually, you'd come with something called a blueprint or a template that resembles how would your house look like when it gets built. And you can use the same template to build similar houses with the same aspects. So here in Kotlin, we have classes that help us to do that, to build these blueprints and reuse them with other stuff, for example. Classes also so helpful as they can help you to represent a real life object within your program. So say, for example, we have a class called user, and now we can add the attributes of this user, how something like the email, password, and these basic information, as well as the things that this user can do, like he can sign in, sign out, modify data, for example. So the things that the user can do are represented as functions, and the attributes are represented as properties or variables. So now it's time to create our first class. And under src main Kotlin, right click, choose new, create Kotlin class or file, and here we're going to make our user class. Make sure to choose class and hit enter. And here within the class, we are going to make the attributes of this user. So this user have a name, so var name of type string, initially equal to an empty string. Now we're going to have var email of type string, also initially equal to empty string. Maybe var password, for instance, string equal to empty string. And maybe the var age of type int equal to 0 initially. That's great. So this is the attributes, or these are the attributes that resembles or represent the user attributes here, or how the user object looks like. Now we're going to make the functions, or the things that this user can do. So this user can sign in, so fun sign in, just print signing in. We're going to have a couple of functions like sign up, signing up, and lastly sign out, signing out. Great. Now it's time to use the class we made there. Now I'm going to make this with a variable. So we have to create a variable called user equal to our user class, and make sure always to add the parentheses here. So if you right click or control then left click, you would find that it points to our class here that we made. Great. Now it's time to change the properties of our class, which is the name, email, password, and so on. So for that, we are going to call the user object. So this now is called an object of a user class as any variable that is equal, or that any variable that equals to our class, or any class. It's named an object, so it's an object of this class. That's an instance of this class. So our object user here, we can call it, or we can call its properties. So we can change its properties. So the name is going to equal to John, and the password or the email is going to john@john.com, for example. Maybe the password, I'm just going to leave it as the, no, not just have 1 to 8. And lastly, the age. So John, I have been knowing John for, I think, for the first video. This is 14. And it's time to print the properties of John here. So for that, I'm going to call println user.name, the age, the email, lastly the password. If you run the program, we would have the following output. So name is John, he's 14, this is his email, and lastly his password. Great. And if we didn't set the properties by ourselves, we're going to have the default values that we set within the class. So empty string, empty string, empty string, and 0 for the password. So empty string, 0 for password, empty string, and empty string. Great. After calling or after printing the properties of the John here, we can also call the functions. So user dot sign in. So John would like to sign in. Maybe he would like to sign up later with another account, and he would eventually sign out. If we run the program, we would have signing in, signing up, and sign out along with his properties here. Now let's modify the function to print John is signing in, or the name is signing in. For that, I'm going to have here at the name is signing in. Let's make it small. The same thing here is from here to there, and here as well. Now we have these functions here. Let's run the program and see the result. Here we have John is signing in, John is signing out, John is signing out. If we didn't set the name here, you would have the default value. So I'm just going to delete this line here. We're going to have the default value is signing up without any name. As you can see here, just an empty string. Great. Let's make another object to see how we can do this. I'm going to delete all of these, and I'm going to just call this John, and the other one, and the other object is going to be called Mike, for example, or Mikey, for example, equal to user. And now let's set the John and Mikey name. So name, so John dot name is equal to John, John, John. Mikey dot name is equal to Mikey, capital M. And now let's print. Oh, now let's use their functions. So John dot signing in, John is signing in, and Mikey is signing up because he doesn't have an account. So signing up. If you run now, we would see that John is signing in and Mikey is signing up. We have seen how to create a class, how to add properties to the class, how to add the things that the class can do with functions, and finally how to create object or instance of the class like this here, and how to modify the class data or the class attributes, as well as calling their functions. Now that's great, but notice here we have something unusual, as for every attribute that you're gonna add, you have to add an initial value or a default value. So say for example we have var height here for John or for the class itself, and it's type double. And if you leave it like that, you'll have a syntax error, as it must have a value or an initial value first. So instead of that, we want to construct or add the values when we make our class or we make our object here. So we want to add them here within the parentheses here. For that, we're going to learn about something called constructor. So the constructor is used just to construct an object of this class. And the way to do this, we have multiple ways. We're going to start first with the most common way to do that. And here, after the class name, you're going to add the parentheses here. And within these parentheses, you're going to add the attributes of the user. So we have var name of type string. We also have var email. Just as before, let me just copy them. These here. I'm going to open the constructor and you're going to add them here. So var name of type string, delete the initial value, add a comma. So the comma to separate between the attributes. Email of type string, delete the initial value, add the comma, password type string, same to the age, and lastly for the height, type double. That's great. Now here, notice how we have a syntax error here, saying that we missed to set the attributes of this variable here, or this class here. So I'm just going to delete Mikey here, and let's play with John. So here we see, if you press Ctrl P, you see that we have to add a name, email, password, age, and height. So now let's add the name. So the name is John. The email is john@john.com. I'm just gonna have it in the same in a separate line just to see them. And also we have password. So 128, and we have age, so 14. Lastly, we have the height, so maybe 1.50, yeah, like this. Just format the code. And here is our value. So password type string, so we have to add string here. And here's our object. So just constructed at creation, or at the initial time that we created this object. And here, if we just, as before, dot name to print the name. So for example, println the john.name, john.height, for example, john.the email, and maybe he would sign in. So john.sign in. Let's run the program and see our result here. So the name is John, the height is 140.5, the email is that, and he finally signs in. So this is another way to construct the object when we create it, instead of setting it with the dot for every time we create an object like this. Now you would see that we have created the user's property with the var keyword here. And whenever we want, for example, print the name, let's just print the John's name, and let's see the result. I know it's John, but we just want to make sure. So the name is John, and the var keyword here allows you to reset the value of the object here. So if you, for example, click John here, write John here dot name and set it to Johnny, for example, then you try to print the name again, and let's run the program. We would have John, then Johnny, as we have set the name, or reassigned the name to another value. So the value here is no longer used. So the var keyword here allows you to reset them. And if you change these to be a val instead of var, and notice here we have a compile time error saying that you cannot reassign a variable made with the val keyword. So now you cannot reassign it. So this is the difference between val and var in the class, same as the difference between them when we used them in the previous videos. Now let's talk about the other ways to create a constructor. So far we have seen how the constructor is created with the parentheses here. We could also add the constructor keyword to make it more readable if you would like. You can also delete it, it will just work either ways. So keep in mind that this constructor here is called the primary constructor of the class. And now we are going to make a secondary constructor. So why are we going to make a secondary constructor? Well, say for example, the primary way for the users to sign in to your website is going to be only with the name, email, and password. But you also have an alternative way to make them sign in with the name, email, password, age, and height if they want to. So they have the option. But the primary way is to sign in with the email, name, and password. So we're going to just delete the height and age here, and we are going to add them in the secondary constructor, or the secondary way to make them sign in with. So here, to make a secondary constructor, we have to use this constructor keyword, and here we enter our values without the var nor the val keyword, so just the name of the variable and the type. So I'm gonna have the same ones as I have them there. Name of type string, password of type string, email of type string. Let's just make email first, then comes the password. And here I'm gonna have to add extra information like the int. If they want to add the age, they have the option, and the height type double, they also have the option. Now to tell this class that this constructor is a secondary constructor and it is the extended version of our primary constructor here, we have to add the colon. So the colon will tell the class that this secondary constructor here is the extended version of this primary constructor. After adding the colon, we add this, and this refers to the primary constructor. After adding this, open the parentheses, and here we pass the same values that we have here. So the name, email, and password. Name, so this name refers to this name here in the secondary constructor. Also have the email, then the password. That's cool. After setting up the secondary constructor, let's construct our object. So val John again is equal to user. And if you open the constructor, we would see that we have multiple overloads. The primary one here at the bottom and the secondary one here at the top. You can use either of them to allow the users to sign into your website. So I'm just gonna try the primary one first. So John for the name, John for the email, just keep it simple, and 128 for the password. And now if we try to access any of these, we will still have access to the name, password, email, and other functions as well. But notice here we don't have access to the height nor the age, as we have them in our secondary constructor only. Even though if we added them here, for example 14 for the age and 140.5 for the height, we still don't have access to them. And that's because any new data that you add to the secondary constructor here are only restricted or limited to our secondary constructor only. And to resolve this issue, we can make properties here within the class if the user chooses the second way to sign into your website, for instance. So for that, I'm going to make a variable called age of type int, just like this one here. Initially is going to be equal to 0. Another one for the height small, initially equal to 0 0.0 0.0. Great. And within the secondary constructor body, if the user chooses the second way to sign in, we can set these values. And if you, for example, try to access these values here, like the name and age, you could see that they only hold the initial value. Even if you try to print them, for example, the name and the height on the program, see here we uses the secondary way to sign in, or the secondary constructor 14 and 140.5. we still get the initial values. So for that, we have to open the body of the second constructor and reassign these values to the values that were passed when the user chooses the second way to sign in. For that, they have the same name, so for that we can differentiate between these two variables, or these four variables, with the this keyword. So add this here dot age, and now this refers to the property here within our class, as this refers to the class, and the age refers to the property within the class. Now say this dot age is equal to the past age, so past age refers to this one here, and this dot height is equal to our past height. If you go back to the main function and try to print the age and height, you would see that we have them set within, like we did when we created the object. Two things to note about the secondary constructors. The first thing is that you can have multiple secondary constructors, so you're not only allowed to make only one secondary constructor. So let's try this. I'm just gonna copy this over and paste it here. We're gonna have an error because they are similar. We have to change the constructor's signature. So for the second one, I'm just gonna delete the height, for instance, and here we have the secondary constructor. The second thing is that we can have functions within the secondary constructor's body. So here I'm just gonna make a function. Let's go do something. and open the body. So you can have functions within the secondary constructor's body, but you cannot call it from outside of this constructor. So if you, for example, go here with John.do something, it's not allowed. You only can call it within the constructor's body itself. So do something, here you go. Now let's move to the final thing for this video, which is the init block. So the init block is something looks like this init, then it has a body here, and whatever initialization that you have for the class, whenever code that you want to be executed whenever you create an instance of this class, you should add it to the init block here. So for example, I'm just gonna print something here, println creating new instance with the name, for example. Now let's just head here to our example, and I'm not gonna call any functions. What I want to do is just create an instance, so like so here, like we did here. Now let's run the program and see the result. So we see here creating new instance with the name John. So this init block here is called for every time we call the user here. And if you, for example, create another one, user, the name is Mikey, like before, maybe the email is just Mikey again, password maybe 12, and we're not gonna even assign it to a variable. Let's run the program, and here we see creating new instance with the name John, creating new instance with the name Mikey. So that was it for today's video. It was a long video. We learned a lot of stuff about classes. In the next video, we're going to dive deep into classes and the things that you can do with classes. So until next time, thanks for watching and please stay tuned.